Hey everyone, welcome back to Our Small Footprint. Today is the first day of my food prep videos that I do each month. So if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off grid, and we do 4 to 6 weekly groceries. Now everyone's been really interested in how I make those groceries stretch. So what I do in the first week or two after getting the groceries is I do all the food and meal prepping that is required to make sure that that food lasts us the month. So everyone really loved knowing what I do, so I share a voiced over video each day in the first week or so with all of the stuff that I am making from the food that you saw in my grocery haul, and sharing the recipes and things that I do with it all, and how I make it last the month, and how I store it and all that sort of thing. So today is day 1 of the April's monthly haul, and we started processing meat mostly. So I did as discussed in my how I plan my monthly hauls, one of the first products that we need to process is the minced beef. So this video is mostly about all that minced beef. So enjoy, ask any questions in the comments and I will answer all of them, and let me know any feedback that you've got in the comments, and I will see you again tomorrow. Thanks. One of the best buys that I got this month were these bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs. Now I bought 2 18-kilo boxes of these. They come in 2-kilo packets and they were frozen. So I threw one whole box into the freezer and the other box into the fridge, and you will see these over and over again throughout this month as I process them all. I'm going to use all the bones for stock. I use the thighs just as I would normally use thighs, either skin on or skin off depending on what I'm going to use them for, and I'm going to process them all over the span of the month so that I've got them there to use. It worked out about $2.27 I think it was per kilo, and when I weighed it all out to see what the percentage of meat to scraps was, it's about 60% meat, so it still works out as a really good price, just with that little bit of extra effort. And I will use all the carcasses because we use them for dog food and we use them for stock and things like that. And I didn't buy any whole chickens this month because I knew that I had all these thighs that I had purchased, so it works out fairly well in that sense. Part of the bonus of these bone-in thighs is having all the bones to use for stock. So we make stock on a regular basis because I like to can the stock for use in other recipes, but also because we use all the carcasses and all the vegetables that go into the stock as dog food. So we puree up all the leftovers after I pressure cook the stock, and with all the vegetables and all the bones and everything in it, and that becomes dog food to add to their dry food to help with the budget there. So I'm making stock here. We use whatever we happen to have in the fridge or freezer. A whole bunch of carrots are a good filler, a couple of onions and some garlic, and then we throw it all in the pot. I had picked my leeks from the garden the other day. They are very narrow. The bed that they were in wasn't getting irrigated particularly well, but I've got a whole pile of them, so I'm using them in various different things. So I threw some in the stock for this one as well because it was there and I may as well. I always buy half a head of celery purely for using for stock and things like that. It freezes, it doesn't defrost very well when you defrost it, but it'll stay in the freezer fine for using for stock. When I harvested my leeks, I also pulled up my last plant of Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes, so we had some of them for breakfast this morning. The Jerusalem artichokes are very similar to potato when they're cooked up. We really enjoy them. They don't store very well though. So with those veggies we had some of the chicken thighs that I had processed this morning, so I marinated them as usual, bit of salt, a bit of cowboy candy brine, some onion powder, a bit of garlic I think I added, and then a smidgen of olive oil to give it some thing to cook in so the spices don't burn in the pan. And I just mixed that all up and let it sit for a few minutes while I was doing other things, and then I grilled it off like normal in our cast iron pan. While other things were cooking, I placed the chicken skins that I had taken off those thighs onto a baking tray that had some baking paper on it, a little bit of salt, and layered it with another piece of baking paper and another board to help, and another tray to help press it down so that they would crisp up in the oven and we could have them as a snack a bit later. When we cook the thighs, marinate the thighs and cook them off in the cast iron, they end up lovely and moist. This is how they come off the pan, and we use these for many things throughout the month, but they're always nice right at the beginning of the month to have with any sort of fresh vegetables that we have to serve up. We have this as breakfast a lot, whatever veggies we have, some eggs and some of the grilled meat. So after breakfast, while the stock is still pressure cooking, I started on the bolognese. So we put a lot of vegetables in our bolognese, probably about the same amount in weight as we do mince. So I use my Thermomix and I grind up onions, carrots, mushrooms, celery, garlic. There's a big chunk of frozen zucchini that's in this one, and I add some minced up bacon for flavour, and then I throw all the mince in. So this bolognese, this is a 30-litre stock pot, and I'm using 4 kilos of mince in this bolognese. So I cook off all the vegetables, then add all the mince, and then just break it up a bit as it cooks off and let it all sort of brown up a little bit before I add anything further. Bolognese is a well-loved meal here. I make it in really large amounts because I freeze it in 1.2 kilo lots, and the children will eat it multiple times a week. If that's what happens, they are really happy to eat it. So making it in large quantities works really well. I add a myriad of things to my bolognese. There's children helping me here as well. I add passata. I don't tend to can my own passata. It just uses too many tomatoes, so it's something that I buy. Same with the tomato paste. So I purchased those by the jar. I added a whole lot of jars of my own home roasted tomatoes that I had canned as well. And then I think there was a couple of cans, like store-bought cans of cherry tomatoes in there as well, just to bring it up to the right sort of a liquid amount. And then I add lots of that lovely bone broth that I've just cooked off to bring the liquid up even higher, because once I get all the stock that I want in there and I get the liquids and I get it simmering again, what I do is I add a whole bag or two, so 500 grams to a kilo depending on what I'm making or how much mince I've got, of pearl barley into my bolognese, and then it simmers for about, I want to say, 6 to 8 hours. The pearl barley cooks down and ends up like little grains of meat. It has this very similar mouthfeel to meat, but it's got sort of a nutty texture to it, and it just stretches that meal exponentially because it thickens up. So I had 8 kilos of mince to get through all up. There was 4 kilos put in that bolognese, and this here is my French onion mix for the French onion herb mix that I use for making my meatballs. So I grabbed the rest of the mince. First up, I put 1.8 kilos aside into the fridge for dinner tonight because we're having hamburgers for dinner. And then I grabbed the other 2.2 kilos and put it in a big bowl so I could make meatballs with it. So I added the French onion soup mix to the mince that I had just made. The rest will go in a jar for next time, or for in soups or anything else. I use it for a myriad of things. A couple of eggs go in my mix as well, and then I use my homemade sourdough breadcrumbs to go in it as well. I was a little short on breadcrumbs this month, but it turned out alright. I normally soak my breadcrumbs in a little bit of milk, but I didn't have quite enough to worry about, so the meatballs are a little tougher this month than normal, but they're still very tasty. Some minced garlic and some mustard powder. I use Dijon if I happen to have Dijon, but I haven't made any mustard up lately, so mustard powder works. And then I just blend it all together and check that the texture seems to be alright, that it seems to be wet enough. You don't want to overwork meatball mince because it will get tough, so you just want to sort of squeeze all the spices into where it needs to go without too much of a kneading texture, just a squeeze, get it all combined and ready to go. I weigh my meatballs, as I discussed in my planning videos, I really like to know exactly how many portions I get of everything, so I weigh out my meatballs to 30-gram lots. It means that they cook evenly as well, because all the meatballs are the same size, so they're going to cook at the same rate in the oven, and none are going to overcook or get burnt around the edges and things like that. So I sit there and I weigh out 30-gram balls onto my scales in bulk, and then I hand roll them all to place them on the baking trays. I didn't count how many meatballs I got out of this actually, and the kids stole some before they got bagged up, so I have no idea. But I ended up with, I think, 2 of these large trays and 2 small trays full of meatballs, and they bake in the oven for about 15 minutes, and then I let them cool, and then I bag them up. Sometimes they're not quite cooked in the middle, which is fine, because we always heat them up before we're serving them anyway, whether it's in a red sauce or in a gravy or just fried off in a pan. So while they were baking, I made some berry cordial. So I have a steam juicer, and I use around about 1 kilo of frozen fruit if I don't have any fresh fruit to use. I'm really looking forward to us having fruit trees and berry trees and stuff to use, so that I don't have to buy this frozen fruit. It has gone up a huge amount in price. It's about 1 kilo of fruit, especially when it's frozen fruit and it's quite tart, not exactly the freshest, to about 600 grams of sugar. And it goes into my steam juicer all together and processes. So the bottom part of the steam juicer is full of water. It steams through the top and steams all the fruit into a funnel spot that has a hose on it that allows for all the cordial to be siphoned into jars. I pour this cordial back over the top every now and again to make sure everything's dissolved and we get as much as possible, and I stir the fruit up. Doing that means that I get some little bits of pulp in the cordial, but we don't mind. So with that mince I put aside, we had hamburgers for dinner while we have some fresh tomatoes, because I bought the tomatoes for cooking with. They don't last very long because they're just sauce tomatoes, but we make the most of them while we have them. So we had the meat patties. My meat patties, I just mix a little bit of onion powder and salt into the beef mince, and that's all. The kids had been served, so I came back to making Darryl and my hamburgers. We've got homemade duck egg mayo, some lettuce mix that was purchased because I don't have a whole lot of greens in the garden at the moment, and fresh tomato. We use my caramelized onion jam as a topping on our burgers as well. It's really delicious with so many things, but especially on burgers. So we have caramelized onion jam on there, and then those meat patties, and that was dinner for the night, which the kids really enjoyed. We don't do it often, but it's very tasty when we do it. Takes a lot of mince per serve, but it was delicious. So that was it for the first day of food prep. All that mince is done and dusted and is all sorted, and it's on to working on chicken and pork and all that sort of thing, and I have to get those tomatoes processed as well. So I will see you again tomorrow, and thank you for watching.